All right, let's dive into it today. We're taking a deep dive into the Great Wall of China.
Yeah.
We're going to explore its history, bust some myths, and uncover those cool facts that maybe even some history buffs might not know. You ready to go?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Great Wall, everyone thinks they know it, but there's always more to discover.
So first things first.
Yeah.
It's a little misleading calling it the Great Wall.
Right.
It's not one continuous wall.
Right. It's like, it's more like imagine a massive ancient Lego project where you have different dynasties over centuries. They just keep adding to and modifying it. And it's a whole network of walls and trenches, natural barriers. It's more accurate to call it the Great Wall.
Plural, yeah.
Plural. And we're talking over 13,000 miles here. That's like walking from New York to LA and back, and then doing another half trip just for fun.
That's a lot of walking.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, but so let's go back to the beginning. Like, when did people in this region first start building walls?
Well, the earliest walls that we can trace back to, like 7th century BC during the Warring States period.
Okay.
So, imagine all these kingdoms fighting, trying to grab land and power. Walls are a pretty good way to protect themselves.
Right.
Their resources, their people.
It's like the ultimate keep-out sign.
Yeah.
But on a giant scale.
Exactly. And then along comes the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, in the 3rd century BC. He's the one that unified China.
Okay.
Ended the Warring States period. And one of the ways he kind of solidified his power was by connecting some of these existing walls. He wanted protection, especially from like those nomadic Xiongnu tribes up north.
Whoa, right. So it kind of became a symbol of a unified China, the Great Wall. Or should I say?
He could say that.
Yeah.
Walls.
Right.
He could. But, it's interesting. It represents a paradox because he destroyed some internal walls that divided those former kingdoms, but fortified the northern borders, right? So was he really bringing people together or just pushing them apart? And it's still a question that historians debate today.
That is interesting. It wasn't just about keeping invaders out. It was also about controlling movement within China, too. So after the Qin dynasty, did everyone just say, okay, the wall's done, we're good to go, let's move on to other projects?
Well, not quite. It kind of became this ongoing legacy project for centuries, right? Different dynasties would take it on, they would expand it, they would repair it, sometimes even abandon sections of it.
Interesting.
It all depended on their political priorities and, what threats they were facing.
Right, so it wasn't just a static structure, it was constantly evolving.
Exactly. Take, for example, like the Han Dynasty. They were still dealing with those Xiongnu nomads, so they expanded the wall further west and they built all those watchtowers, the beacon towers.
Wow.
They even had military farms along the wall to keep the troops fed. Oh, wow. So it's like this whole like mini civilization that grew up around it.
For sure. And then, you get the Ming Dynasty starting in the 14th century. They're the ones who really give it that iconic look that we see in pictures today, right? The bricks, the stone, the thousands of watchtowers. They were very serious about their defense.
Yeah. I heard, didn't they use sticky rice in the mortar?
Yeah.
I heard that somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. They mixed that sticky rice soup with slaked lime to create this super strong and durable mortar. It was surprisingly effective.
Oh,
and you could still see it holding some sections together today.
That's way cooler than regular old cement. What other, surprising techniques did they use?
Well, they were masters of adapting to the landscape, right?
Yeah.
They built the wall to follow the natural contours of the terrain.
Okay.
So they're using the mountains, the rivers, the deserts to their advantage,
Yeah.
In some places, they even carve steps right into the mountainside to make it impassable. It sounds like they put a lot of thought into making it effective and aesthetically impressive too.
Absolutely. It wasn't just a barrier. It was, they were creating a symbol of power and ingenuity. And it wasn't just about keeping invaders out either. The Great Wall, it also played this huge role in controlling trade and just the movement of people. It was like a giant checkpoint along the Silk Road.
Oh yeah, the Silk Road, that legendary trade route that connects the East and West.
Exactly. And the Great Wall, with its gates and garrisons, became this key part of managing the flow of, goods and people along the route. A way for the Chinese government to collect taxes and regulate trade and just, kind of keep an eye on who is coming and going.
It was kind of like a combination of like a border crossing and a customs office.
Yeah, you got it. And, it really shows how the Great Wall wasn't just about defense, it was also about economics and politics and the movement of people and ideas.
It's pretty fascinating to think about all the different things that it was used for.
It really is.
Yeah.
And speaking of different things, let's talk about some of the myths surrounding the Great Wall. I'm sure you've heard a few.
Oh yeah, like how it's the only human-made structure visible from space.
Ah, yes, the classic. Unfortunately, not true. From the moon, you wouldn't be able to see it at all. It'd be like trying to spot a hair from miles away.
Really?
And even from low Earth orbit, it's really hard to see unless you have the perfect conditions. You need the right lighting, no clouds, all that.
So no alien tourists stopping by to check out the wall, huh?
Maybe they have better telescopes than we do. But there's another myth. This one's a little more gruesome, the idea that, human remains were mixed into the mortar.
Ooh, yeah, I remember hearing that one. That's a little creepy.
Yeah, it's a little creepy. But thankfully not true. No evidence to support that. Just a good, scary story.
Okay, so we debunked some big ones. What about the name itself? The Great Wall of China? Was it always called that?
That's interesting you asked that. In China, it's been known as Changcheng for centuries, which just translates to long wall.
Right.
But the Great Wall of China, that term really came about much later, probably from, European travelers and writers and stuff.
That makes sense. But you know what? It's pretty fitting. It is a pretty great wall.
Absolutely. But remember, not one single wall. It's this whole system of fortifications built over all those dynasties.
Yeah, I'm getting that now. Okay. It's hard to picture, though, just how massive this whole thing is. Where does it all begin and end?
Well, imagine this. You start at the Jiayu Pass in the west, out in the Gansu province, pretty desolate area. That's the westernmost point of the Ming Dynasty wall. Then you follow it east. You're going through deserts, mountains, grasslands.
Wow.
You're going alongside rivers.
That's a real cross-country adventure.
You said it, and you end up at the Bohai Gulf in the east, where it meets the sea.
So the Great Wall stretches from the western deserts all the way to the eastern coast.
Totally.
That's pretty wild. And it passed through so many different environments. Did that affect how it was built at all?
Oh, absolutely. The materials they used and the techniques they used really varied depending on where they were building. For example, in mountainous areas, they often used stone and built it to, follow the contours of the terrain.
Okay.
In flatter areas, they might have used what's called rammed earth, basically, just layers of packed soil.
So they had to, get creative and adapt to each region, huh?
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing, how they were able to build something so extensive and so complex. Back then.
Yeah, it really is a testament to their ingenuity and determination.
Yeah.
And we can't forget the manpower involved. I mean, thousands and thousands of people working on this thing.
That's a lot of sweat and muscle. It makes you think about the lives of those workers. They weren't just building a wall, they were building a whole way of life along the way.
Right, they were. And their stories are often overlooked.
That's it.
We focus on the emperors and the battles.
Right. But the lives of the everyday people who lived and worked on the Great Wall, that's just as fascinating.
Who were these people? What were their lives like?
Well, it was a pretty diverse group.
Yeah.
You had the soldiers, of course, stationed in the garrisons and watchtowers, keeping a lookout.
Right.
But you also had farmers who cultivated the land nearby, traders who used it as a transportation route.
Oh, okay.
And you even had entire families living in villages that kind of sprang up along the way.
So it wasn't just a military zone. It was also a place where people lived and
worked.
Yeah, and raised families.
Exactly.
Wow.
Imagine the markets, the festivals, the stories that were shared in those communities. Life on the wall, it could be harsh, especially in those remote areas. But it was also a place of resilience and community.
It must have been such a unique experience, to live in the shadow of this massive structure, knowing it was both protection and separation. Absolutely. And that kind of duality of being both connected and divided, that's something that runs throughout the history of the Great Wall.
It's like a physical manifestation of the complexities of Chinese history and culture.
That's a great way to put it. And it's something to keep in mind as we explore, the lasting legacy of the Great Wall.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive today, from myth busting to uncovering the lives of people who lived along the wall. It's clear that the Great Wall of China, it's way more than just bricks and mortar, right? It's a symbol, a story, a real testament to human endeavor.
But I guess, what does it all, mean
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things? What's its lasting legacy?
That's the question, isn't it? And I don't think there's one easy answer.
Yeah.
The Great Wall's been interpreted in so many different ways throughout history, right? I mean, it's been seen as this symbol of defense and strength.
But also, isolation and division. It represents like the ambitions of emperors, but also, the backbreaking labor of all those countless workers.
It's like it reflects back whatever people want to see in it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's part of what makes it so fascinating.
Right.
Even today, it holds such different meanings for different people.
Oh, for sure.
For some, it's this source of national pride, a symbol of China's long and rich history. But for others, it might, represent a darker side of that history, a reminder of, conflict and control.
It's a powerful symbol no matter how you interpret it.
Yeah.
And for those who actually get to visit the wall and walk those paths, it's got to be an incredible experience.
Absolutely. Standing on those ramparts, imagining the battles that were fought, the lives that were lived there, the stories. It's this visceral connection to the past. You can almost feel like the echoes of history whispering in the wind.
That gives me chills just thinking about it. As we're wrapping up here, I keep coming back to this question.
Yeah.
If the Great Wall could talk, what stories would it tell us?
Oh man, what stories, right? It would tell tales of emperors and warriors and traders and travelers, families that made their homes in its shadow.
Wow.
We'd hear stories of bravery and sacrifice and love and loss. All the triumphs and tragedies that shaped China over centuries.
Maybe like listening to the heartbeat of a nation.
Yeah.
Like all the hopes, the fears, the dreams, etched into those stones.
I think that's the real legacy of the Great Wall. It's a reminder that history, it's not just dates and names in a textbook. It's about real people and their stories and their struggles, their triumphs, and it's something that, continues to resonate with us today.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dives into the Great Wall of China. I hope you found it as fascinating as we did. And if you ever get to see the wall in person, just remember all those layers of history, all the human experiences that it represents.
And if you can't make the trip, keep exploring. There's a whole world of stories and knowledge out there.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Keep diving.